Okay, we're going to go through and talk about some bust-proof wide receivers. Now, these are going to be some of the safest options in fantasy drafts. Of course, we are going to care about their ADP. I'm not going to come out here and tell you, oh, Cooper Kupp's going to be good. Of course, everybody knows that. Now, what I do want to say before we get into the players is please don't think you can go through your fantasy football draft, take the safest option in round 1, take the safest option in round 2, the safest option round 3, 4, 5, 6. Because if you do that, what's going to end up happening is, while yes, maybe you're not going to have a ton of players that turn out to be Michael Thomas from last season, but you're also going to miss out on the Deebo Samuel. You're going to miss out on the Mark Andrews. You're going to miss out on Christian McCaffrey in 2019. We need to be striking a decent balance between security with a few of our picks in our fantasy football draft, while at the same time managing to swing for some upside. So maybe these are wide receivers that you go, okay, I took Christian McCaffrey at pick 5 in round 1. We took Christian McCaffrey there. If he stays healthy, hell, this team has access to an elite level ceiling with that pick as is. So might as well make sure that we're not taking Christian McCaffrey, Michael Thomas, Saquon Barkley, all in the same roster, because hell, if CMC hits, you're already probably in a pretty good spot to begin with. And at that point, you almost just don't want to mess it up. Now, of course, before we get into it, please go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And I don't want to waste your time any more than I have as is. Let's go ahead. Let's dive into Keenan Allen. Now, with Keenan Allen, this is surprisingly a season that we are looking at him being drafted back-to-back with Mike Williams. I've seen a lot of underdog fantasy drafts where Mike Williams goes before Keenan Allen. Now, I will be the first person to admit, as we go through and talk about these players, I need to hit the negatives right away before we get to the positives. With Keenan Allen, you've seen a couple key statistics trend downwards every single year. You've seen Keenan Allen's yards per route run, and you've also seen Keenan Allen's air yards per game go down over the past 3. It went from 2.1 to 2 to 1.9 over the past 3 seasons with his yards per route run. And his air yards per game, this is where it's actually a little bit concerning, has fallen from 98 to 78 to 49. Whereas now Keenan Allen is almost exclusively being used as a short area wide receiver closer to the line of scrimmage. And we really don't necessarily want to assume that, hell, with Keenan Allen, this is someone that is going to have big spike week potential on a week-to-week basis. We know that his touchdown rate's been historically lower than the average wide receiver, sitting around 4.43%. And with Keenan Allen, you're never really going to draft him and then go, okay, yeah, he has the ceiling to do what Cooper Kupp did last season. No, that's behind Allen. He's going almost into year 10 of his NFL career. You really have a strong idea of exactly who Keenan Allen is. But does this mean that Keenan Allen is someone that we should be avoiding because he doesn't have the upside to turn into Cooper Kupp? He doesn't have the upside to be the wide receiver 3 overall. No, that's not really the case at all. Because if we look at Keenan Allen from a per game standpoint over the past 3 years, this is a player that has averaged the wide receiver 10 finish. And despite all these other Los Angeles Chargers players getting pushed up ADP, this is the one year that you have Keenan Allen actually going a little bit later because people are naturally assuming that Mike Williams is the guy with upside in this offense. Now with Keenan Allen, you're getting a behind receivers like A.J. Brown, T. Higgins. You're getting Keenan Allen back-to-back with Mike Williams. And I would argue that Keenan Allen has a higher floor than all these players. We haven't really seen Keenan Allen post anything but a low-end wide receiver 1 finish over the past 3 seasons. And this should be the best coaching staff Keenan Allen has had throughout his entire NFL career. This should be the best quarterback Keenan Allen has had throughout his entire NFL career. On top of this, his yards per game have remained extremely consistent over the past 3 years. He's averaged almost 10 targets a game over the past 3 years as well. And he's at a target share there at 25%. And even if the touchdowns go down for Keenan Allen this upcoming season, even if he has a touchdown rate that's laughably bad, maybe down at 1 to 2%, hell, that's nothing new for Keenan Allen. You're never drafting him for touchdowns regardless. So I really like Keenan Allen as that perfect example of, if you take Christian McCaffrey round 1, if you take Saquon Barkley round 2, and you're like, you know what, I have enough upside with this team. My ceiling is high enough. I just need to make sure that if these players hit, I have enough production to go around them. That's where I believe that Keenan Allen is a natural fit in the third round as your wide receiver one. A very safe selection overall. And real quick, if you think that it's crazy that Keenan Allen's being drafted back-to-back with Mike Williams this year, and you want to take advantage of that discrepancy in ADP and our overall rankings, make sure you go sign up for Underdog Fantasy, the #1 place to draft your teams. I've already drafted over 300 teams on Underdog Fantasy. In my opinion, there's nothing more fun than hopping in those underdog drafts, and they are so confident with their platform, they're willing to pay you to play fantasy football. When you go make your first deposit on Underdog Fantasy with promo code FLOCK, they will match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100, and you'll get our 2022 rankings, our dynasty rankings, our dynasty rookie rankings, our dynasty rookie draft guide. You'll support this channel and have some fun in drafts with us on the live stream. But let's go ahead and let's move over to our next wide receiver. This is going to be someone that's actually going at the beginning of round 4 this season, and very similar to Keenan Allen. I would say that he definitely has a capped ceiling overall, especially if we look at the overall offensive context that he's going to be playing in this year. DJ Moore. Now with DJ Moore, he's falling to round 4 despite him averaging almost 25% of his team's target share over the past 3 years. If you look at how impressive DJ Moore's season was considering his age this past season, wide receivers that have had a 29% team target share in 12 or more games played that year and that were younger than 24 years old, you had DJ Moore, Jarvis Landry, Mike Evans did it twice, AJ Green, Justin Jefferson, DeAndre Hopkins, and Odell Beckham Jr. This is the talent we are talking about with DJ Moore. Now, the issue is DJ Moore is not going to have access to a top 5 finish in his range of outcomes. Simply, there will not be enough red zone opportunities. There will not be enough touchdown upside in Carolina for DJ Moore to crack inside that top 5. We saw this with him going out there and having a touchdown rate over the past 3 years, less than 3%. That's one of the worst marks in the entire NFL at the wide receiver position. And yes, 9 times out of 10, we want to look at that touchdown rate and we want to say, yeah, I mean, it's garbage. Touchdowns are so volatile season to season. We really can't use that as a predictive measure going forward. There's a strong reason for this. It's not because the wide receiver that DJ Moore is. It's because the offense and the quarterback play that he has had. With DJ Moore, he has played with the combination of Sam Darnold, PJ Walker, Teddy Bridgewater, Will Grier, Kyle Allen, Taylor Heineke, and Cam Newton throughout his NFL career. Not good Cam Newton. I mean, prime Cam Newton you love. This was final career Cam Newton. Barely has a shoulder attached to his body Cam Newton. And the average adjusted yards per pass attempt for DJ Moore's quarterback in games that he has played, 6.05. That would have ranked 28th this past year. On average, throughout DJ Moore's entire NFL career, he's had bottom 5 NFL quarterback play. This has severely handicapped his overall ceiling in fantasy football. And despite this bottom 5 quarterback play over the past 3 years, DJ Moore has averaged a top 24 wide receiver finish at the position. And I've actually drafted DJ Moore in a decent amount of drafts on Underdog this offseason, because if we go ahead and if we look at where DJ Moore has been drafted, this is a wide receiver that, like we said, is going at the beginning of round 4. He's being drafted currently as the wide receiver 18, directly behind Cortland Sutton, Jalen Waddle, Hollywood Brown. I'm taking him over Hollywood. I'm taking him over Cortland Sutton as well. But I do need to admit something. If Sam Darnold is indeed DJ Moore's starting quarterback this upcoming season, DJ Moore is not going to finish better than wide receiver 15. He will have that severely capped ceiling given the lack of overall touchdown upside in this offense. So you're almost drafting DJ Moore at his ceiling for his floor. Now, the reason that I have been fine drafting DJ Moore through my drafts in June, through my drafts in the beginning of July, is given the outside chance that the Carolina Panthers make a play for a quarterback. If they were to trade for either Baker Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo, based on the adjusted yards per pass attempt that DJ Moore has dealt with over the past, 4 years of his NFL career, I would say that would be the best quarterback play that he has ever experienced. And if he can just get up to a league average touchdown rate, if he can just get league average quarterback play, this would be someone that does have top 10 upside overall. So I want to say that DJ Moore is bust proof. With the worst quarterback play in the NFL, he's still going to be a top 24 wide receiver. But there's a reason that his ADP is this low. It's because the ceiling is capped without a change at the quarterback position. I would say I'm really only drafting DJ Moore if I'm you, if I'm comfortable with the volatility and saying, hell, if the quarterback change does happen, we're getting a value. If it doesn't, we're probably overdrafting someone ever so slightly, but we are overdrafting them. Now let's go over to our next wide receiver. It's going to be someone just a little bit further down in our wide receiver rankings in fantasy football drafts. Someone else that is getting a quarterback change this year, Diontae Johnson. With Diontae Johnson, this is a wide receiver that finishes as the wide receiver 7 on a per game basis this past season. This is a wide receiver that goes out there and has 10.56 targets per game. That's almost a 27% team target share. The only wide receivers that have been able to average a target share as high as Diontae Johnson this past season were Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, and the receiver that we just got done talking about in DJ Moore. Now, currently in fantasy drafts, you are getting a discount on Diontae Johnson. We pull this up. Diontae Johnson's being drafted behind Jalen Waddle, behind Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton's 27 years old and has never had a season close to what Diontae Johnson just put up. Same thing with Hollywood Brown, who was in that same draft class that's never been able to put up a top 10 wide receiver finish, as you just saw from Diontae Johnson. And with Diontae, the reason that people are pushing him down is very similar to DJ Moore. Based on the projected horrendous quarterback play this upcoming season, you are getting someone that may not necessarily have access to ever getting to Cooper Kupp last year, to ever being Deebo Samuel from last season. You don't have access to a top 3 wide receiver finish based on the perception of the quarterbacks that you currently have in Pittsburgh. Now, I'm going to be the first person to admit, while I don't think Kenny Pickett is going to come in and light the world on fire, I don't think Kenny Pickett's going to come in and be a rookie season Justin Herbert by any means. It's still at least in the range of outcomes. And how bad do you think the combination of Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett will be this upcoming season? Do you think that combination will be the worst quarterback play in the NFL? The second worst quarterback play in the NFL? The third worst quarterback play in the NFL? Because what I will tell you is with Ben Roethlisberger, the only veteran quarterbacks, the only non-rookies last season to have a lower adjusted yards per pass attempt than 39-year-old Ben Roethlisberger were Andy Dalton, Jacoby Brissett, and Sam Darnold. And with that offensive context, Diontae Johnson goes out there. He puts up the wide receiver 7 finish on a points per game basis. Now you're getting him as a mid to low end wide receiver 2 in your fantasy football draft, stepping into the prime of his NFL career. So very similar to DJ Moore. The reason that this player is being drafted so low, I have to admit, there is a reason. It's not like everybody is just the dumbest person on planet. No, people are smart. There's a reason this ADP is so efficient on Underdog Fantasy. It's because he doesn't have it in the range of outcomes to turn into a top 3 wide receiver if he has a below average quarterback play, specifically below average quarterback efficiency. So with Diontae Johnson, you are definitely getting a wide receiver with a high floor. If you were to access any type of ceiling, what you need to see is you need to see Kenny Pickett or Mitchell Trubisky come into an offensive situation where they have quite possibly one of the better head coaches in the NFL, and they're able to thrive in a system built around them, and they're able to provide average to above average quarterback play. That would be how Diontae Johnson vastly beats his ADP. But if you have Kenny Pickett, Trubisky coming in, their bottom 5 quarterbacks this year, Diontae Johnson's going to be someone that probably slightly outperforms his ADP. He'll probably still be a top 24 receiver based off volume and volume alone, but he won't have access to spike weeks getting him to 30 points per game. But we're identifying bust-proof wide receivers. We're looking at receivers right now that simply can't fall outside the top 36 options. And our next guy, I think, is the perfect example of another target hog, someone that's going to just be flooded with targets. However, at the same time, has very bad quarterback play, so his ADP is going to be depressed here. Brandin Cooks. Now, with Brandin Cooks, I want to be ahead of this. I am not a fan of Davis Mills. I know that people have come out and they've tried to get cute with it. They've said, oh, Davis Mills, he scored 3 touchdowns against the New England Patriots. Davis Mills, he was better than Justin. I don't think Justin Fields is a good quarterback. I don't think Zach Wilson's a good quarterback. So comparing Davis Mills to them doesn't necessarily speak volumes of Davis Mills. I think Davis Mills will be a bottom 10 quarterback this season, possibly a bottom 5 quarterback in the NFL, and he will not be able to put up a ton of production for this entire offense. But with that being said, going over to target shares, Brandin Cooks has an elite one. Brandin Cooks, 26% of his team's targets this past season. And if you're looking at this as a wide receiver that currently on Underdog Fantasy is being drafted as that low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3, it's almost what you're looking for. You're trying to identify someone that could go out there and could just give you a top 24 option if we're looking at bust-proof wide receivers. And to speak on how many damn games Brandin Cooks has played his NFL career. This is a wide receiver that played 16 games this past year, 15 games the year before that, 14 the year before that, then 16, and 10. Well, I want to believe it, while you want to believe it, while everybody wants to believe that Brandin Cooks is potentially injury prone, maybe because he missed the Super Bowl a couple years ago, maybe because he has dealt with a decent amount of concussions. At the end of the day, he doesn't miss games. The man's played 119 games in his NFL career. And while, yes, Brandin Cooks is a wide receiver that was drafted way back in 2014, my favorite year to look at these wide receivers being drafted. I fell in love with Dynasty Fantasy Football in 2014. But you have Brandin Cooks still as someone that's only 28 years old. It's very surprising, but he was only 20 years old when he was drafted by the New Orleans Saints back in that 2014 draft class. So Brandin Cooks is younger than you think he is. At the same time, he is less injury prone than you think he is. He has an incredibly high target share. Davis Mills is going to cap his overall upside. Davis Mills will cap his overall upside. But at the same time, this is someone that should have a very high floor. Now let's go over to our last wide receiver. I don't want to say he has the floor to be a top 24 receiver, but I think he has the floor to at least not disappoint and to not severely bust. It's going to be Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk currently is being drafted as the wide receiver 43 on Underdog Fantasy. So this is someone that you are getting as your wide receiver 4 on your roster. He just posted the wide receiver 32 season on a points per game basis. And of course, the number one storyline that you're going to have with Christian Kirk this offseason is going to be the contract that the Jacksonville Jaguars decided to give him. They gave him a $72 million deal. Now, I talk about this all the time, but those NFL contracts, they're fake. If you just look at $72 million, that doesn't tell the half of it. But you know what does tell the entire story? The guaranteed money that the Jacksonville Jaguars gave him. $37 million. They gave Christian Kirk $37 million. And you're looking at a team that last year had to put in Laquan Treadwell during stretches. Treadwell was getting targets in Jacksonville. There are almost no players, at least at the receiver position, that are going to be able to come out here and compete with Christian Kirk for targets. And if you're looking at this overall offensive context, we can assume, while yes, this is not going to be a good team. I want to say that right now. While you do get rid of Urban Meyer, and while yes, we can blame a lot of the rookie season struggles for Trevor Lawrence on Urban Meyer in particular, still, he was one of the worst rookie quarterbacks we've seen in a very, very long time. I think that this will be an offense that Christian Kirk doesn't have it in the range of outcomes to be a top 10 wide receiver. There's a reason why you are getting a discount on Christian Kirk for the floor that he is going to give you. And going back to what we said at the beginning of this video, I'm making this as a bust-proof wide receiver video. This isn't my favorite wide receivers to draft. These aren't wide receivers you need to be coming away with in every single one of yours. No, this is specifically for people that went through, they took Christian McCaffrey in round 1. Maybe you didn't get Christian McCaffrey in round 2, but you took some risk on your roster. You swung for the fences by taking Michael Thomas as the second receiver on your team. Maybe you went through and maybe you decided to bet on a running back coming back from an injury like a J.K. Dobbins. And then on top of that, you grabbed Travis Etienne, and you're just trying to find wide receivers that you are very comfortable with, and you want to put some rookies around them, and you're still getting up to the plate, swinging for the fences But in certain spots in your roster, you're like, let's just take someone that I can slide into my flex if I need. That's going to be Christian Kirk. I think based on the offensive environment, based on the play of Trevor Lawrence, you can never assume he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy. But I think, hell, at least he's going to be a top 36, a top 40 option, and he will return value at the minimum on his ADP. Now, of course, thank you so much for being a part of the flock, supporting the channel. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. I truly do appreciate you. I really do hope you have a great day, and hope we get to see you with the video tomorrow or the live stream tonight.